Oh, you're here? Welcome to the Flin's Complete Guide. Today we're going to be diving into the electrifying world of this eloquent, courtly, and so charming lunar charged powerhouse. Flins is going to be your go-to on-field DPS, dishing out massive AoE damage with his burst, slicing through enemies with his slick electro-converted attacks. Whether you're rocking him at C0 or chasing those juicy constellations, this guy's got style and substance. But hold on, his team comps can be picky and you want an Anemo or a NodKrai teammate to unlock his full potential, but we'll touch on more of that later. Plus, with all those ghostly whispers he's been hearing, stick around as we break down his playstyle, top teams, builds, how to maximize his lunar charge damage without getting zapped by his restricted team archetype. Let's get into it. This is going to be an on-field DPS that deals great lunar charge damage via his burst. He's going to enter a special state through the use of his elemental skill that's going to convert his normal and charge attacks to electro damage, and also enable a short burst, a special elemental burst that only he has access to, and this is going to be preferred over his normal, long-lasting, higher-costed elemental burst. The special skill state ends if Flin is swapped out, so he favors teammates who provide buffs or damage from off-field. He also has the moon sign mechanic from NodKrai and relies on having at least one other NodKrai teammate to unlock his full damage potential. While Flins can deal direct lunar charge damage from his talents in Constellation, don't get this confused with reaction lunar charge damage, which he can do as well. So for the purposes of this guide, if you hear me say lunar charge damage, that's referring to his talents in Constellations and abilities dealing direct lunar charge damage. If I say lunar charge reaction damage, I mean the new NodKrai lunar charged reaction. First, let's talk talent as well as level priority. Flin's elemental burst is going to make up a majority of his personal damage, so this should obviously be maximized. First, prioritize this as number one. Second, you should go for his elemental skill, and lastly, his normal attack talent. You can leave that, well, basically at level 1, because during his elemental skill phase, in the buff that you're put into after activating it, it's actually going to use the elemental skill multipliers on his normal and charge attacks, not the actual talent for your normal and charge attack level. Being a main field, on-field damage dealer, level 90 is recommended to maximize not just the ability that you'll do with your Flin skills, but he also has the ability to do lunar charge reaction damage as well. So definitely make sure you level this character at least to level 90. But what about 95 and 100? Leveling characters from 90 to 100 gives them extra base attack, health, as well as defense. Additionally, it's also going to increase the level multiplier of all elemental reactions, including lunar charged. Picking Flins from level 90 to 95 is going to increase all of his damage through varying degrees. Flin usually has around a 9% increase in total attack going from 90 to 100, benefiting his lunar charged as well as electro damage. In addition to this, Flin's level multiplier for his lunar charge reaction damage improves around 16%. Overall, Flin's damage is going to increase by 4 to 5% going from level 90 to 95, with another 4 to 5% going from 95 to 100, giving you a grand total of about 8 to 10% total damage increase if you choose to level your Flins from 90 all the way up to level 100, which is around the average value of other typical attack scaling damage dealers available in Genshin Impact. Flins is going to utilize the state that he's put into after you activate his elemental skill to generate additional particles, do additional electro damage with his normal and charged attacks, and also gain access to his special short version of his elemental burst. So with this in mind, we can finally arrive at the combos and rotation you'll be using on your Flins. We're going to talk about two. The first one's going to be the Constellation 0 combo. The C0 rotation looking something like this, which is a little bit of maybe a math problem out there. If you don't know what this annotation means, don't worry. D stands for dash, SQ stands for short burst, and E for elemental skill. N is also normal attack. I'll break this down for you here. This means that you're going to start the battle with an elemental skill, use one normal attack, followed by another elemental skill, short burst, and then two combos of 4 normal attacks with a dash cancel at the end, 2 normal attacks, an elemental skill, the short version of your burst again, followed by 4 normal attacks with a dash cancel at the end, and lastly, an additional 5 normal attacks. At Constellation 1 and above, your C1's going to allow you to use an extra special skill and burst in your combo window, and so you'll end up with this. 1 elemental skill, 1 normal attack, elemental skill, short burst, 4 normal attacks, a charge attack, a dash animation cancel, another elemental skill, a short version of your elemental burst, 4 normal attacks with a charge attack at the end, followed by a dash animation cancel, your elemental skill, in a short version of your burst, followed by 1 single normal attack. Might look a little much if you're not used to characters that have, well, unique rotations like Flin's. If you practice it a bit, you'll get it down. I believe in you. When we're looking at artifact sets to build Flin, there's really one standout set, and that's going to be 4 pieces of the Night of the Sky's Unveiling, or the Natsu set. This is going to be Flin's best artifact set, as he's ideally played in a team where his moon sign is a level 2, giving you the Ascendant Gleam, where the 4-piece set bonus of this is going to give you 30% crit rate, and all party members 10% lunar damage bonus, including lunar charge reaction damage as well. If you don't have that farmed up yet, a considerable temporary option, especially in teams with Farina or another healer, is going to be the Marchus Hunter set. While not performing as well as the 4-piece Natsu set, it's not that far behind. However, you are going to have to basically run Farina in your team to utilize this set, as well as an additional healer and someone who already has, well, sort of a limited team composition for him, and will make it even more limited, and you'll also lose out on the team-wide lunar reaction damage bonus of the 4-piece Natsu set. If you don't have access to either of those, you could use Gilded Dreams as a temporary set to transition while you're farming up your 4-piece Natsu set. As we get into artifact main stats and substats, we need to touch on elemental energy requirements. The most important ER requirements for you to hit is the ER required for you to short burst 2 times on the field at Constellation 0 or 3 times at Constellation 1. There are a couple characters that are going to change your energy requirements, such as Fischl Auroran and Kuki Shinobu, as well as having additional other Electro characters in your party. And last but not least, the Electro Traveler's crazy energy battery capabilities will also reduce this as well. At Constellation 0, if you're using the Traveler in your team, you only need 100-105% energy recharge. If you have one of at least Fischl Auroran or Kuki Shinobu, 110-120% energy recharge will get you there at C0. Any other characters that are Electro will get you to 120-135% of the energy recharge necessary to do those 2 bursts during his on-field time. Having access to Constellation 0 actually increases the energy requirements that you need for your Flins, as you're trying to fit in 1 additional elemental burst during his rotation. Your ER requirements are going to change based on the different amounts of other Electro characters in your party. There also are a couple other specific Electro characters like Fischl Auroran and Kuki Shinobu that will reduce the amount of energy requirements that you need in your build. Also, the Electro Traveler, if you choose to use them, massively batteries you, so you can also further decrease the amount of energy recharge you need at Constellation 0. At Constellation 1, you're actually going to increase the amount of energy recharge you want in your Flins build, so you gain just enough energy to utilize another short burst during your rotation. For both C0 as well as C1, the energy requirements will look a little bit something like this. Also, do note that if you are going to be pulling for Blood-Soaked Ruins, his own signature weapon, that's going to reduce the ER requirements you need on your Flins by around 30%. As far as artifact main stats and substats for your Flins, their stat priority is going to be your energy recharge until that requirement is hit, depending on if you're Constellation 0 or Constellation 1 in the team that you're running him with. Crit, attack, elemental mastery, and then flat attack, leaving your circlet to either be a crit damage or crit rate main with as much crit or crit damage substat as possible. Goblet's either going to be attack percent, which is slightly better than an elemental mastery goblet, and your sands will be energy recharge if you need it to hit that stat priority, or attack percent, and if you can't get that, elemental mastery. Attack percent performs slightly better than elemental mastery on Flins because he tends to get a considerable amount of elemental mastery buffs from other teammates as well as himself with his A4 passive. So being an on-field main DPS, you're looking for crit stats with at least a 2-to-1 ratio of a crit chance as well as crit damage. Electro damage bonus goblets should be something you're asking about right now. Why are we not using that on my electro damage DPS? Well, that's because electro damage bonus goblet should be avoided since most of his damage is coming from lunar charge damage, not even the lunar charge damage reaction, but lunar charge damage that he just straight up does in his kit, which doesn't scale with electro damage bonus. When it comes to weapons, we're going to be looking at the best ones you can have access to on your Flins. The number one is going to be Blood-Soaked Ruins, his signature weapon and also his best option, giving high access to high base attack crit rate, crit damage as well as lunar charge damage bonus. And on top of all of that, the energy refund that it does do is going to greatly reduce the energy requirements you need in your build, reducing it by approximately 25 to 30%. All said and done, it's simply the best weapon for him, so if you want to pull for it, go for it. However, his second best weapon, the 5-star Staff of the Scarlet Sands, is quite amazing. It's going to give him plenty of crit rate as well as extra attack based off of his elemental mastery, which is something that we want to be building on him and buffing him in his teams as well. Flins can only stack the passive with his special skill and have at most 2 stacks after the second special skill use at Constellation 0. However, it still performs well on him and becomes even better when the special skill hits multiple enemies, which can give him multiple stacks. If you are using this weapon, do note that while we did say that attack percent on your artifact stats is generally a little bit better than elemental mastery, if you're using this though, elemental mastery main stats on your Sands and Goblet can be optimized and be best with the Staff of the Scarlet Sands. So use whatever ones you have that will give you a better main stat substat combination. The only major downside of this weapon is that it does have a very high crit rate stat, which can make it slightly difficult to build around, considering you also do get 30% crit rate from the 4-piece Natsu set bonus, as long as you have Moonside of Ascendant Gleam level 2. However, all of that being said, it is a fantastic option if you have it laying around. Other 5-star options like Fractured Halo, Staff of Homa, Symphonist of Sense, Primordial Jade, Wing Spear, etc. are fine. They're just good, solid stat sticks. For 4-star options, the Deathmatch is generally going to be one of his best 4-star options, especially at high refinements where it can even compete against some other 5-star options that don't really stand out. However, the downside of the Deathmatch is still here, as its performance is going to drop when you're against 2 or more enemies due to its own passive. An entirely free 4-star option that is amazing for him is the Prospector Shovel. This is going to be the NodKrai craftable polearm, and it's going to be the best free and fully obtainable item for Flins, providing him a ton of lunar charge damage bonus with Ascendant Gleam up to 48%. But if you have the Miss of Windspear and don't really feel like crafting the Prospector Shovel, Miss of Windspear is not too far off from the Prospector Shovel, so it's a choice that you can use if you have it laying around and you just don't feel like crafting the shovel. When it comes to team building, Flin's super viable teams do require a NodKrai teammate, so you can gain the Moonsign of Ascendant Gleam level 2 to fully unlock his kit as well as his best 4-piece Natsu set of. When it comes to team building, well, Flin's most viable teams do require a NodKrai teammate, so you can achieve a Moonsign of Ascendant Gleam level 2. This is going to fully unlock your kit, including the 4-piece Natsu set effect artifact bonus. Ideally, his team should include at least either one of a Nefa or Ino, which is going to unlock the double NodKrai Moonsign Gleam. If you don't have either of those, he does perform sadly much worse than with them. And in addition to this, one of Flin's teammates ideally should be holding the 4-piece Silken Moon Serenade to buff lunar reaction damage even further. A template for a Flin's team is going to look something like this. You're going to be using Flins and then an Anemo character or a flex pick of your choice, and then you want one additional Electro and one additional Hydro character, and you want them either to be a Nefa or Ino. Ideally, you don't need to use both, but you do want to include at least one of them. When we're looking at NodKrai characters, Nefa provides Flins with a shield, electro particles, elemental mastery, lunar charge base damage bonus buff, is a great off-field personal damage character. She's also one of the best electro teammates for Flin, period, and her early vertical investment via C1 or R1 with her Fractured Halo also can increase Flin's damage further. Ino is a NodKrai character. It's going to be a 4-star off-field Hydro applier that can also enable lunar charged as well. If you have access to her C1, she can give the active character 80 elemental mastery, which is going to help Flins out even more. Her Constellation 6 does give the team 35% lunar charge damage bonus. So if you're looking for a NodKrai character, you don't have a Nefa, Ino's definitely going to be a pretty powerful Hydro option for your team. Another option is going to be Llama. Llama's skill does apply Dendro for off the field, generating Dendro cores for Flins to trigger Hyper Bloom. Llama's burst buffs Hyper Bloom damage. However, since Llama replaces the Anemo character in your last team slot, This is going to cause an expense of lower lunar charge uptime with no electro resistant shred, as you lack that Anemo character. As a result, this is going to lower Flin's lunar charge damage in exchange for the hyper bloom damage. Ultimately, teams with Llama are possible and you can use them, but they do perform worse than teams with Enefa and an Anemo character to support Flins instead. Powerful electro options we kind of already hinted at and talked about. Auroron's fantastic. Fischl is going to be great with their personal damage, generating additional electro particles similarly to Auroron that helps you reduce the energy recharge you need. Electro Traveler's skill and burst significantly decrease the energy recharge you need on your Flins. So if you want to buff out some Electro Traveler options, that's an option for you there as well. And honestly, I just like seeing the Electro Traveler get a little bit of love every once in a while. But if you want to branch out and try some other buffing options, if you happen to have just a bunch of energy recharge laying around, Kujo Sara with Constellations can give you a large attack buff and crit damage buff, or for some nice big bursty spikes of damage with your Elemental Burst on your Flins. You can also use someone like Yaimiko or even Beidou. Other Hydro characters, if you don't want to use or don't own Ino, you can use Yelan for a wide damage bonus for the active member, as well as doing off-field damage bonus. Farina's a fantastic character. Obviously, just fit a healer in your teammate somewhere. So if you're using Farina, maybe don't use Sucrose, use someone like Shalonen or Jean. You can use Mona in here, get some access to the lunar charge damage bonus from her Constellation 1, maybe some crit rate from her Constellation 4. Do note that Mona's buffs are pretty short lasting from her elemental burst, and so it's only going to affect a portion of your rotation on Flins. You could also check out the boy Xingqiu for his, well, defensive damage reduction as well as hydro application. Your fourth slot is going to be that Anemo / Flex slot, and Sucrose is actually going to be an insane character to buff your Flins up. She's going to be able to wear the Viridescent Venra set. You can use Tales of the Dragon Slayer or Wandering Evenstar to further buff your teammates and increase the damage that Flins does, and Sucrose also is going to increase your character's elemental mastery, giving you more lunar charge damage. Lanyan could be a good Anemo option as well. You get the Viridescent Venra set, Dragon Slayer, as she could wear that as well. She also does give you a sturdy shield, so you're going to be losing damage over using someone like Sucrose, but you are going to gain a little bit of survivability if that's something you're worried about. We do need to talk about Kazuha real quick. Lunar charge damage doesn't scale off elemental damage bonuses, so you're not gaining any of that benefit from Kazuha here. You can still use him if you want to for his personal damage and strong grouping. However, I would suggest using Sucrose over Kazuha here in 2025. Like we said before with Farina, if you want to use Farina, pair her with Jean as your Anemo support. That's going to be fantastic as well. Some other powerful supports that you can use in your flex slot that aren't any of the elements we talked about previously include Shalonen Bennett as well as Zhongli. These are going to be great characters that provide some sort of defensive as well as offensive benefit to your Flins team. And on top of that, they also aren't going to interfere with your lunar charged uptime either. There's a ton of different character combinations that you can utilize to make a solid Flins team. Just make sure you have at least one NodKrai character in there, and honestly it kind of feels like outside of the NodKrai character being a necessity to boost and open up Flin's entire kit into the thing that it needs to be, he's seemingly like a pretty straightforward team to put together around, which is quite great. It feels like I'm playing, you know, the traditional Genshin 1.0 experience. Bring my guy, bring a couple supports, bring a Viridescent Venra, and go to town. With that being said, hopefully you're armed with everything you need to know about Flins. Check the guide, hit the bell for more, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.